Hey there, game gurus, welcome back to the channel. Today on Glen's Retro Show, we're not going to talk about the GRS Build-A-Cade, we're going to build one. So if you're not familiar with the GRS Build-A-Cade, it's basically a 1/6 scale arcade machine that you build yourself. It goes for about $89. The pre-orders are open now. We're looking to ship them in November. It does have the option of interchangeable controllers, dual joysticks, steering wheels, spinners, trackballs, other things down the line. We include everything in the kit except the following. So basically, when you buy this for $89, everything's in the kit except the following. You will need yourself a Raspberry Pi computer. Now, this particular machine supports one of 3 different Raspberry Pis. The Raspberry Pi 3A, it's a smaller little unit. It only has one USB port on the back, so we do supply 2 USB ports on the machine. So if you do use a Raspberry Pi 3A, same performance, but you only have one USB port functioning on the back. If you have one of these, Raspberry Pi 3A will work. Of course, most people probably have the Raspberry Pi 3B, and that's this one right here. And this is the one I'll probably install in today's video. We have multiple USB ports on the back, but as far as performance goes, there's really no difference between the 3A and the 3B, but you can see there is a bit of a size difference between them, but that's really about it. The last Raspberry Pi we currently support is the Raspberry Pi 4, and that's this one right here. This one will give you the best performance, but at this time, HDMI out on the machine will not work. So if you have Raspberry Pi 3A or B, you can have external HDMI working if you want to put it on your bigger screen TV and play full-size controls. But right now, the Raspberry Pi 4 will give you the best performance, but it will not currently support HDMI out. We're looking into that for the future, but right now it will not work. So we also have right here something we just built as well. This would be a 3D printable thing you can do. It's called the GRS Build-A-Base. And basically you're able to put your machine in here. I have a video, I'll put a link down below, where you can put the machine and actually tilt it. So if you don't see the screen as comfortable as you would want to, because people of course are taller, shorter, or whatever, you'll be able to tilt your machine to a better angle so you can view it properly for when you're playing the games. Of course it locks in that position. One other thing you also need, aside from those Raspberry Pis, is just a power supply, depending on the Raspberry Pi that you have. The Raspberry Pi 4 requires a beefier power supply than the 3s, but that's the only thing you'll need. So when you have the kit right here, everything's in here except the Raspberry Pi model A, B, or a 4, and its power supply. SD card, screen, everything else is in here. And to build it, pretty much you need your hands and just a Phillips head screwdriver for the most part to build the machine. And we're not going to talk about these today. These are the interchangeable controllers. I'll do a separate video on these. But in this box right here, you have basically dual joysticks, 3-button additional joystick, a spinner with free spinning Hall effect technology. If people know me, they know I make the best spinner in the world, as well as a steering wheel attachment for it, and an optical trackball for those type of games. But we're not going to look at that today. We are going to take a look at this. Let's do an unboxing of a production unit, GRS Build-A-Cade, and put one together. Let's get started. Okay, once again, the pre-orders for the GRS Build-A-Cade are live right now. I'll have a link down below to that. This kit here, again, is $89 and includes everything except your SBC computer and the power supply. So you can see the box right here. It's typical GRS quality, even with the box. I'm very big on collecting items, and you might want to keep the box for that particular reason. But this was designed in partnership with Arcade Workshop for release as one of my products. And I know it's not, people don't really get too excited over boxes, but I kind of do. And it kind of shows you here, these are the different parts that are going to be inside the box. Pretty much everything, again, that you need, except for this SBC power supply and a screwdriver to put it together. And you can see we're in partnership here with Arcade Workshop. And it gives you all the special features on here. I'll read them off to you. Of course, it's fun to play, easy to build, do-it-yourself project kit. It's an authentic 1/6 scale arcade machine powered by Raspberry Pi. Compatible with the Raspberry Pi 3A, 3B, and 4. Add your own games to play arcade classics. Now again, we do include one arcade classic. We include The Adventures of Robbie Roto. We're fully licensed for The Adventures of Robbie Roto, which is included in the build. We have an illuminated marquee, volume control dial, safe shutdown button and power switch. Coin doors have buttons for adding additional credits and other functions. HDMI out currently is only for the Raspberry Pi 3A or B. Headphone jack hidden under the coin door. That's kind of a nice thing. It's a coin lock, actually. External USB ports, we have 2. If you have a Raspberry Pi 3A, it'll only be one function unless you put a splitter inside the unit. And more control panel options available separately, which will be a different video. So let's unbox this bad boy and see what we got. So I'm excited. Again, these are always fun projects. I like putting things together, seeing how they work. Actually, when I was a kid, I used to take things apart to see how they work. But it's much better to build it yourself. So once you take it out of the sleeve, it's on this side right here. Let's go over here. Sometimes these boxes are a little bit tight. There we go. I hate ruining boxes. I know I'm freaked that way, and I apologize. But the first thing we see when we open it up, we have our GRS Build-A-Cade instruction manual. Let's take a quick look at this. Arcade Workshop put a lot of time and effort into this manual to making sure that it was very easy to follow. Let's get inside here. Yes, I save bags. I know I'm a little bit crazy. So let's take a close look to the manual. So you see it's pretty hefty. This is only in English, and it's also downloadable from our site. You can see everything's broken down into sections right here. And we have instructions, with photographs, all the typical warnings you would get with any product. Don't try and eat it. That's probably not going to be the best thing to do. And right here we show all the different parts that are included with the kit. The only thing you really need is a Phillips head screwdriver right here and a wired interconnection. Now the wired interconnection is needed because when you finish building this machine, we have an installer built in, full licensing for the installer. That'll let you basically connect to the internet. It'll download all the software programs, including the Adventures of Robbie Roto, and you can start playing. And of course, we showed on all different parts that are included with your kit. You can verify all the parts were included in here. All different stickers and decals, and again, we do include our own decals. You can definitely print your own. We'll have the dimensions for all the decals available on our website. You could download that and make your own decals, or you can go right to Joe Szabos, who makes the best arcade decals in the business, and he will have some available for purchase if you want to go that way. Now our decals here, if anyone's ever purchased the My Arcade machines, know how high quality their decals are, or II Arcade, how high quality their decals are. These are also just as robust. They're thick. They're almost like a plastic on their own. They're pretty well scratch resistant. Nothing is ever completely scratch resistant, but they're pretty darn resistant as far as that goes. We see all the different parts here again, and of course all the wires that are needed as well. Main wiring harness, the USB port cables, audio cables, and so forth. We use the DSI display ribbon cable for our IPS screen. And of course we show the different Raspberry Pis that are compatible and what features will be available and not available. Again, the HDMI out currently is not working on the Raspberry Pi 4, and you only have one external USB port unless you put a hub on the inside. So 3 is probably overall your best one, but if you really want to play high quality games on a small screen at this time, Raspberry Pi 4 would be your best bet, and of course your power supply you would need as well. And then we're going to get into the building. Again, the manual you can be able to download yourself and look at, and of course comes with the kit. I'm not going to go through every single page here, but you can see everything here is very detailed with how everything gets put together, wording and images. I'm usually better with images versus the wording myself, but everything in here from the Arcade Workshop was put in extremely well, including he puts information on here. If you want to build your own image, we have obviously one you can download, but if you already have a Raspberry Pi image you really prefer playing, we tell you exactly how you can build your own, what all the controls are set up for, and the RetroPie, MAME, and so forth. So this is probably, I'm going to say, probably one of the best manuals you'll ever get with the machine that you purchase. And I'm very proud of Arcade Workshop for the work they did with that. So I'm going to put this aside for a moment, and we'll tilt this up just a little bit if I can. Hopefully it won't fall over so you guys see a bit better. We always have protective foam. We're very big on making sure everything here is delivered to you guys the way it's meant to be, not ruined. So you can see right here, we have one of our decals here, and it's very thick. You can see it doesn't flop over with me holding it. It's pretty thick, and it's got a protective coating on here right now, but self-adhesive backing. And you can use ours, or of course if you prefer your own, you can definitely do that, but we do include some nice artwork developed by the Arcade Workshop. And you can see our first layer in here. We have one of our side panels, very good industrial plastic on here. Everything's done so we can slide everything in real easy, but the real key is right here. All of our screws have the brass receptors in here, so you can go inside this, swap your control panels or modify it without worrying about stripping out your plastic, which I hate when people, they sell these machines and you go on it 1 or 2 times and the holes are stripped out. So we have the brass ones in there. We have our first wiring harness right here. It's the main wiring harness, our display cable, and our bezel for the screen. So I'm going to take this one out just for a minute. We have our next layer here. I'll put this back on top of you. And you can see we have some of our artwork. We have our main joystick overlay, our screen bezel right here. We have our secondary decal for the other side. You can see, again, even these small little decals, they're not flimsy. They're very high quality made, designed to be put on. And if you have to pull them off carefully, you could probably do that and put it back on if you need to adjust how it goes on. So I'm going to put these aside for a second. And you can see we include a micro SD card, and this has our installer on here, which is again fully approved from the team for the Raspberry Pi build we have on here, and it will also install the one game we're licensed for at this time, which is The Adventures of Robbie Roto. Put this down over here. Here is our IPS screen that we include. This is a beautiful, beautiful screen. I know there's some arcade companies that have screens that don't work well from certain angles. You shouldn't have any problem with the colors or anything with this particular screen. This is a DSI display. It's not an HDMI display. This uses the DSI port on the Pis for the best signal going across, which is what we want to try and do. We have our LED panel right here, and of course we have our secondary side panel right here. Nice and solid. Very, very happy with how that'll turned out. We're going to put this back in here and lift this one out and go to our next layer. On this layer here, you can see is our joystick. We do include the ball top and the grommet, which you put on yourself, and the decal. You can use ours, use nothing, or make your own, or get one from Joe Szabos. And again, these are GPIO controllers, so these will go to the GPIOs on the Raspberry Pi. Nice, good, solid tactile feedback, and I'm really proud of the joystick. I mean, I know we mulled over this for a while. I went back and forth with Arcade Workshop on this. It's a solid steel shaft, really good response, and a lot of people think these small joysticks don't control very well, but if New Wave Toys shows you anything, small controllers can work very well, and I'm very proud of how this one turned out. And of course we have just some plastic pieces here that I used to put the machine together. Here we have our coin door, and Gary at Arcade Workshop had a great idea. And we have our 2 buttons here, which they use for coins and other functions. It's all explained in the manual. But under the lock right here is a little lock, but under this is our headphone jack, which I thought was a really neat idea. Instead of putting it on the back, we can have it right in the front. We have a good rubber that will take, many years of removing and putting back on. If you don't want to use it, it's hidden. It's a coin door lock. And again, our connectors here for our GPIOs. Again, good quality on this one as well. You always have to have your silica gel packs. Make sure everything is kept nice and dry. This should actually go in like this. We have, again, our screen bezel right here, and we have our rubber feet for the bottom of the unit. A couple of joystick tops, just in case you happen to misplace one or want a slightly different design. We have a couple designs of them in there. And the dust cover as well for the joystick hole. Now under here we have, again, this is our DSI screen cable right here for connecting the video display. We have all our screws in here, everything marked what they're supposed to be, which is important. Put this down for a second. And of course we have, this thing out here, our back panel, which we have right here. Now we have a joystick on this back panel for very important reasons. We support multiple controllers, trackballs, spinners, steering wheels. So if you have those control panels in, you can't navigate the main menu easily. Of course, you can connect that keyboard or a joystick via the USB ports as well, but we included this joystick. This joystick would be the same type of joystick. You could actually play games if you wanted with this joystick because it's connected to the same pins, but that gives you just the ability, if you're using different controllers, to navigate the menu. We have our volume control right here on the back of the unit. We have stereo speakers. Again, not all games support stereo, but the ones that do, we have stereo speakers in here. We have 2 USB ports, again, for Raspberry Pi 4 and 3. Both will be active. On a Raspberry Pi 3A, one will be active, but you could put a USB hub inside, non-powered, and you would get both USB ports functioning. HDMI out. Again, currently this only works on Raspberry Pi 3A and B. Doesn't currently work on the 4. We have a USB-C power connector. In our prototype, we had a micro USB. We converted that to a USB-C because that's, you know, don't like to fumble with those USB cords, and it's better for power and power management. We have our main on-off switch here, and we have our safe shutdown. I'm trying to say 1 and 2. We have safe shutdown and other function buttons under the joystick as well. And our micro SD card slot, of course, is accessible right on the back. We have also some vent holes, which is very important. And we all have our circuitry in here for our headphone jack, our USB, and of course battery. We include a battery in here as well, and all our power management. And in my test, I was getting easily 3 hours. Of course, it's going to depend on which Pi you put in here. Raspberry Pi 4 is not going to last as long, but depending on the game, depending on what you're doing, you can get 3 or 4 hours easily with this thing just sitting on your desk, or playing games that way. And I'm going to put this thing back in here like so, as best I can. There we go. Put our cables back. That really didn't go in very well at all because I didn't get that in the right spot at all. Let's try this again. I might have you like this. There we go. Put this here. I'm going to pull this one out as well and put our cables back in our proper spots. And this is our last layer, layer number 4. We're going to have in here November. Our coin door area would actually go in like this. Our coin door will go here. You can see our battery. We include the battery as well. Put this thing's back inside here, like so. And of course we have our base, the bottom of the unit, where this is not a speaker hole, this is a vent hole. We have convection, so as the Raspberry Pi 4 or 3 heat up, if you don't have a fan and just heat sinks, it will allow air flowing through here, up and out of the unit. And we'll have our spots right here for your feet. And of course we made sure there's no screw holes under them. We want you to be able to open this machine. We want you people to make modifications to this. We want you people to make this your own. We want you to basically come up with even more ideas that we even did for our Build-A-Cade. Under here we have our acrylic cover for over the monitor. We have this right here is basically how you would change your controllers. This actually goes inside the unit. So you slide this out, allows you to pull the sides open. We have our light up marquee bezel right there. And there are, you see there's plastic covering. You want to take that plastic covering off obviously when you do it. We have more of our base unit right there, panels. And of course we have our wiring harness as well. So enough of me talking. You've seen how we pack it. You've seen how we did it in layers. We see how we try to keep everything neat for you guys. But let's get to building, right? That's what we're here to see. Let's see how we build ourselves a GRS Build-A-Cade by the Arcade Workshop. Okay, one of the first things we're going to start with is adding the decals. I mean, you could put them at the end, I suppose, but it'd be much more difficult. Best time to put on your decals is when you're starting out. Now, the decals we use are very thick. I almost want to say it's the same type of decal you'd used, or they used on the my arcades, which were very thick and high quality. The first thing you want to do is really just line it up the best you can visually. And I'm a bit of a psychopath when it comes to this type of stuff, so this part will take a little while for me to get everything the way I want it. But the secret really is, when you do have it where you want it to be, is to put a little piece of Scotch tape on the other side that you're going to start from. So as you start peeling off the backing, the decal is still staying in its position. I mean, I wish I knew this as a kid, because I was always just trying to put decals on. You peel off the whole back and you just put the decal on, and it never was ever on right. If you got it once out of 1,000, you were lucky. But by doing this, you can really visually look at the decal, make sure it's lined up the way you'll be comfortable with it, and the tape will hold it in the position where it needs to be, so it will stay. If you're not happy with it, just move the tape, which I'm doing right here, and you can very easily reposition it. But the decal we have on here, it's laminated on the outside. There's like a part you'll peel off, and the tape will take it off very easily, which you'll see later in the video. But the decal is quite thick, so if you do put it down wrong, you should be able to peel up a corner, gently be able to pull it off, and it should reattach. You don't want to do it too many times, but once will probably be just fine. But the decal is also very good at resisting scratches, which is really, really good. But when you are happy with how it's sitting on the side of the board here, now, I did use an X-Acto knife to show you you could use an X-Acto knife, because what you do is you peel this, you pull this one side up, you'll see here, and you peel off the backing where the adhesive is, and you would just slice off that piece of the backing. But in all honesty, I stopped using the X-Acto knife and just started ripping it, because the X-Acto knife actually was making it more difficult, because you're trying to hold the adhesive away. It's just easier to rip the backing. But I was just trying to show you could do it either way. And you see, once you peel it off, the decal is very thick and it springs right back to its original spot. So you just let it sit down and it will literally go right where it needs to go. Just press down lightly. And now once that's done, you'll see I'll start taking off the tape, and the tape will take off the protective outer layer. Just, again, the decal itself is got a good laminate on it, but it's just its protective outer coating. And see, it comes right off with the tape, so it saves you any trouble getting that off. There you go. And you can see that decal's got a nice shine to it. And then once that's done, you can see the decal is going to stand right where it's supposed to be. It's not going to move now anymore because it's already stuck down on the top. Just flip it and just pull off the rest of this backing. It'll lay right where it needs to go. And that's the difference between a very thin, flimsy decal and these thicker type of decals, is that you can flex it really well. It'll go right back to its original shape. See, there's no bubbles. That's the next thing. When you have the very thin decals, you might get bubbles. You may see imperfections underneath. With this, it goes down perfectly. There's absolutely no air bubbles whatsoever. So that's one side done. So we need to repeat that now to the other side. And we're going to do the exact same steps. Line it as best we can. Put a couple pieces of Scotch tape on the opposite end. And we're going to repeat the steps. Now this artwork here that we have on the GRS Build-A-Cade is a arcade workshop original. Gary spent a lot of time just trying to find some type of artwork that would look good on a multi-cade, but it wasn't really specific to any particular machine. And I think he did a nice job here with the artwork. And again, Joe Szabos will be making artwork for the Build-A-Cade as well. And we're going to release, I guess, a stencil, if you will. So if you really wanted to make your own personal decals and you want to tackle it yourself, you can do that. Because again, the whole point of the Build-A-Cade is to make it your cade. To basically take the basics of this and make it something that you guys, either dreamed you wanted, or a machine that'll probably never come to market, some weird arcade machine that never really made it big, like a Donkey Kong or a Pac-Man or an Asteroids type of game, but something that you want. And we tried to make it, again, around the size for New Wave Toys because we wanted to be able to add them to that collection. New Wave Toys makes fantastic little machines, and I think it was just a neat idea to have maybe machines that would never be created, still be on your shelf, still playable, and still really high quality. So you can see me being a bit of a psychopath when it comes to being things perfect as you can make it. Just want to make sure everything's lined up where I want it to be. When I'm happy with it, I put the tape around it to hold it. And we'll repeat the steps here. Go to the opposite end, peel back the backing, knowing that the decal is not going to move, and just lay it down. Again, I did use the X-Acto knife here. I don't think on any of the other ones I used the X-Acto knife. It was just really this one. And it just became more of a hassle using that. The paper backing will tear cleanly. It won't leave any pieces of paper underneath it. And even if it did leave really tiny pieces of paper, the decal is so thick you probably would never even notice it. But you can see the decal does flex easy enough. It doesn't get damaged very easily. And just press it down lightly. That's it. And then we're going to go, again, remove the tape. And that outer layer will peel right off with it, which is nice because it's always hard to get these things off. It just comes right off. And you have a perfect decal. You see the decal can take, it's thick. It doesn't just flop over. It's got some rigidity to it, which is good, because that's just going to protect the decal itself even more. And there you go. Done. Both sides look great. You can see
the black fake T molding, if you will, around the corners is all even. And we can put these down. And the good thing is that these decals are not easily scratchable. Next thing I'm going to do here is the bezel around the monitor. I'm going to follow the same steps. You have a bag right here. Everything is in bags and marked what they are. So it's easy to find the right screws, easy to find the right parts. Everything's going to be there. Easy to find. Which again is something we wanted to do. We want this to make an easy thing for you guys to work with. You can see here there's one part of the bezel that's a little bit thicker, the top and the bottom. Just double check yourself. It looks like the thicker does go on the part with the shelf, if you will. And you basically are going to rest it on the shelf, but you do want to make sure the left and right stays in the right spot. So again, I'm going to use a little piece of tape on each side just to hold it in place. Again, me being a little crazy, make sure every atom is the same on both sides. Again, we're going to just pick it up and peel it. And, you know, when I was doing this type of work, putting decals on other builds that I did, the hard part was like the arcade one-ups. I was doing the bezel around the screen. When you have it open in the middle, it's easy for the decal to get messed up, bent a little bit, out of shape, bubbles. It really was difficult. But this here, again, the decal being rigid as it is, it automatically wants to go in the right spot when you're placing it down. The only hard part for me here was just trying to get the paper backing off here. So this time I had to use the X-Acto knife just to get it started. But that's always an issue with any kind of decal, I suppose. But once you get it started, this one I'm pretty sure I just tore the backing versus use the X-Acto knife to try and cut it. And the adhesive, you know, it's very tacky. You know, if your fingers get on it, it's not going to like take away the tackiness. It'll stick down perfectly fine. And you can see right here, I'm just tearing the paper, which is all you really need to do. You do not need, really the only tool you need for this entire project is a Phillips head screwdriver. You don't need anything else. And you can see once again, the tape is holding it in place and it goes down perfectly around the screen. When you go to like larger screens with a more flimsy decal, that part can be very taxing to get that to sit right and not be bent or sit down wrong. Now I'm just going to remove the tape once again. It'll remove the outer coating. You can see how easy that is. Comes right off. The decal staying in place. The whole point of this build is that it's going to be something easy anyone and everyone can do. You want to sit down with your family, your sons and daughters, and build it together as a family. Again, that's what this whole thing's about. And again, the decal is rigid and strong enough where bending it is not going to ruin it. It's not going to put a crease in it. If you do it gently, like here, I'm bending it back. Just try to get that. I think I started on this side, but I think I gave up and went to the outer side, which is probably would have been the smarter way to do. But sometimes even old people, old dogs, can learn new tricks at times. So I went to the other side now. I did the X-Acto knife just to get it started. I tried to keep all of these steps in real time, just so you guys can see how long it would take for you guys to build your unit. See, I got the paper off. You can see how strong the decal is. And just lay it down. That's it. That left and right side right there on the arcade one-ups, you get a decal. It can be very difficult to put down without getting it bubbled or cockeyed. But look at that. It's perfect. Again, there's nothing in this build at all that's hard to do. Some steps might just take a few minutes to do, but everything here is almost like an erector set. Very easy to do. Now we have the joystick overlay and the light up marquee. So in the kit we have this. It's not perfectly clear. We didn't want it to be perfectly clear. We want to be able to have those LEDs in the back illuminate the marquee evenly, not have any hot spots. So we use a special type of diffusing material here. But there is, plastic on both sides. You can see it taking off both sides here, the white on this side. And then we have a clear on the other side. And honestly, I don't think it matters which side is facing out. I just looked on the back. I put the more textured part facing in than where I'm going to put the decal on. You want the decal to kind of sit like evenly, right? So there's a smoother side, there's more a texture side. So you want to make sure you put the decal on the smoother side just so it adheres really well. Now the neat thing about this is, this can slide in and out. You have to take, half the machine side off to get to it, but you can remove the marquee, or you can just pry it open and pull the marquee out if you want to change it. So you can definitely put in different ones if you like. You can see, once again, putting tape on both sides. Once you find the spot, and this one's really easy. You just put your fingers on the corners. You know you're going to be centered and even. And just peel the backing. And again, the decal is thick and strong enough where it's not going to tear trying to get this backing off. It's very important. Again, even though we're selling this for $89, we want you guys to have the highest quality machine and parts possible. So once again, I'm just going to tear the backing and just press one side. And that's it. This is now locked in place. It's not going to move. Peel off the tape. It'll take off the outer coating. And then remove the backing and put the other half down. Again, I wish I knew this little technique as a kid, because I would never have gotten these decals on perfectly ever. I was working with my models or other toys. The decals were always a mess. But doing this little simple technique, it's perfect every time. And there we go. Perfect light up marquee decal. Done. Put that aside. Next is our joystick. Now the joystick, we have the 3 buttons on here, and we have our decal. Now, when I was doing this, you still need tape to hold it in spot, but there's a shelf on both sides that'll kind of keep it centered for you. So it's a little bit easier, but I still put tape on there just because I want to make sure it doesn't shift from the left and right side. But the part of the joystick facing you, there's a tiny shelf. Just line up with that shelf at the bottom. But I still use tape just to make sure it doesn't slide left to right. I'm going to follow the same technique. Get it to where you like it. On the left and right side, you can see on the very bottom facing the camera, there's a tiny shelf there. Just line up with that shelf and you'll be fine as far as that goes. But you don't want the machine or the joystick to slide left to right, hit the buttons. You want it to be perfect. And once you like where it is, same thing, we'll just bend it up a little bit. Here's a shelf right here, right? This is where you want to line it up to, right with this one. Arcade Workshop was very adamant to put that there to make it easier to get the decal for the joystick right where it should be. Same thing, we're just going to tear the backing off. It's hard to do because I'm trying to make sure you guys can see in the camera versus me seeing it the right way. But again, the decal is nice and thick. It'll sit right down and the adhesive holds it in a spot, and Now just repeat, pull the tape off, it'll pull off the outer coating. Very satisfying when that comes off like that. And then we'll just bend the decal a little bit to take off the other part around the stick. You have to be careful because the stick is taller than the hole is. So just make sure you don't, you can probably move the joystick a little bit over to the right and get it out, but it's really not necessary. Just get the bottom off and lay it down. There we go. Just hold it up, pull that down out of the way, lay it down, and you have a perfect control panel decal. If you're asking yourself, in the upper left-hand corner, that's our Build a Base, which I have a separate video on. I'll put a link down below. You can see we have bags for our controls, where the joystick tops are, and the rubber feet. And that is the bottom of the Build-A-Cade. And you can see that's not a speaker hole there. That is actually a vent hole to allow airflow to go through the unit for convection. And we include 4 rubber feet that do a very good job of gripping the material that they're on. And we're using 3M adhesive. So we're using high quality adhesive on these as well. Very easy. There's already depressions of where the circles should go. The circles of the rubber feet. And again, I'm just a little nuts. I always try to make sure they're perfect. Kind of a curse, actually. And there we go. Our rubber feet are installed on our Build-A-Cade. And it does a very good job of not moving around. There's no weight on it right now, but even with no weight, you can see it doesn't want to move very easily, which is what you want. You don't want to be playing a game and have the machine slide on you. Next, we have our battery. And for my testing, I am using a Raspberry Pi 3B. And I've been getting easily 4 hours out of it. But again, it's going to depend really on the game, what Pi you have in there, and so forth. So your mileage may vary. And again, we have our bags. Everything you need here is marked with screws, and the manual tells you which screws you want. We mark very clearly in the manual and in the bag what screws you're going to need. You don't have to hunt for anything. All the bags are pre-marked for the part of the build that you need. You can see right here, we have an arrow, and that arrow shows you the front of the unit, the part that would be facing you when you're playing the machine. So just make sure when you're building this, you follow the arrows so they're all facing forward, and you'll have no problem building it. Our battery here, we have the one JTS connector on it. I have the battery facing so you can see the capacity facing upward, so that the cord is on the left-hand side. And this is a little bracket that holds it in place. Now we have room in here. We can go larger battery capacities, which would fit in here, and we just have to make a larger clip to hold it in place, or longer screws to hold it in place. But this capacity battery, I think, is pretty good. Again, we're trying to keep the price inexpensive, and I think around the 4-hour runtime on this is pretty good. And we take our 2 screws and just lock the battery in place. And again, when you're tightening these screws down, I want to be very clear. You don't want to forcibly tighten it down. Hand tightening is just fine. All the screws go into the plastic except for the 6 on the back of the unit, because that's, you might want to open the unit up. But these other screws really are touched never. But you just want to make sure you don't strip them. Just gentle hand tightening is more than adequate to hold these things in place. Just able to hold up the weight of the battery. It's not going to go anywhere. Let's put that to the side for a moment. Next thing I'm going to work on is the screen. And this is the mount that holds our IPS screen. Here it is right here. And the viewing angles, I know a lot of people complain about certain machines where the viewing angles are not good. This screen is viewable in every angle. It's a really good screen. It is a DSI. It's not an HDMI screen. It's a DSI screen. So it's direct to the Raspberry Pi 3, A, B, and 4's display connector. And you can see there's that little divot on the one side and the right. So if you make sure that's on the right, the connector for the DSI goes to the top. So you have the divot on the right-hand side where my finger is, and you can see how the monitor goes in. Now what we're going to do is we're going to secure the monitor with a couple of screws. There's a DSI connector right there. That's how we connect to our Pi. Now when you put it in here, there's a little tab. Here's our screws once again that'll hold it in place, marked. These are the right screws for the monitor. But there's a protective overlay of the screen. Just make sure that is accessible when you're doing this, because if you screw it down and the tab's underneath, it'll be harder to get the covering off. Now you could remove the covering first if you had a little towel, and we'll put it down on a towel. But as long as the protective covering's on the monitor, you can place it on a table just without any issues. So you can see there's that little tab right there. You want to make sure that tab is outside, not turned underneath. Otherwise, it'd be hard to get the protective covering off later. I'm just going to put in our screws that will hold the screen in place. It's just 4 screws. Again, I'm going to tighten them. And again, hand tightening is fine. You don't have to crank it down on it. Once you feel some resistance, you're good. That's it. It's not going to go anywhere. Being held in place really well. Put that down for a moment. Now we have standoffs. Now there are 2 separate size standoffs in here. 4 long, 4 short. For the direct connecting to the screen, we're going to use the 4 short ones. These are the short ones right here. Actually, those are the long ones, and then there's the short ones. So that one we do not want to use the long ones for right now. We want to use these short standoffs right here. There are 4 of them, and we're going to screw them into the screen on the 4 mounting points. And again, hand tight is fine. There's no real need to crank down on these things. Hand tightening is fine. You can see the difference in the 2 sizes there. The short ones we want, not these long ones. We're going to flick that out. Goodbye. We'll put this down for a moment. Now here is our outside bezel for the display. And again, we have our screws in a bag marked which ones you're going to need. We'll need 4 of these. And again, all of this is in the manual. It'll tell you which size screws that are needed, and each bag is marked. Okay, now we have the monitor here. The DSI connector is actually going to go towards the shelf part of the screen. Now this will only go in one way, so you know you're doing it right. See how easy that went in? If you put it in upside down, the holes won't fit. So it's very easy to know which is the right way, which is the wrong way. So if I turn it around, the holes do not match up. Not that I'm being very good, a little dramatic. I'm doing it there, but the screws, holes, and the mounting holes won't match. It only goes in one way. So let's lay that down and insert the 4 screws into the 4 corners of the bezel to the monitor. Once again, hand tightening is fine. Once you feel the resistance, you can stop. There's no need to crank down on this. It'll hold it in place just fine. One, 2, 3, 4 in the corners. The 2 center ones are not being used. Again, hand tightening is just fine. And everything's being held in here really well. And there you go. You have your monitor ready to go. Put that down over here. Next is our DSI cable connector. This is in a bag by itself. It is clearly marked. One side of the cable is black, meaning there's no contacts. The other part's got the gold contacts on it. You see it right here. Those are your gold contacts, and that's your, well, non-working side. So this cable does only go in one way. If you put it in backwards, it will not work. And this is our connector right here. Now this is what's called a ZIF, a zero force insertion socket. You very carefully, you can press down and pull it out. You want to be careful here. You don't want to put it down on an angle. You could technically break the connector, or it could pop off. If it pops off, you usually can put it back on fairly easy. So we're going to take the DSI connector. Here is the black part. That's going to face basically towards the outside of the shell. The silver contact should be facing on the inside, like this. The black is out there, and that's how it's going to go in. And then press both sides of the ZIF down to lock it in place. There you go. That is now locked in place. Again, you don't want to hold the machine up by that, but there should be no, it should be resistance. You shouldn't be able to just pull it right back out. It should sit in there flush and stay in pretty well once that ZIF is pressed down. Next thing we're going to put on, this is our SD card extender. So this will go into the Raspberry Pi, into the SD card slot, and it'll have an extender that'll reach out to the back of the unit, so you don't have to open the unit if you ever want to change the SD card or make some changes to the SD card. Now, I'm going to be using the Raspberry Pi 3B. Again, the Raspberry Pi 3A would also work, and so would the Pi 4. So all we're going to do is take the connector, as if it was an SD card. The writing will be facing out or up as you insert it into the SD card slot like this. And again, just be gentle, putting it in straight. Now, the Pi there doesn't have a locking mechanism. It just kind of slides in. But that's it. Once you press it in all the way, you should be good to go. We'll put that down here for a moment. Now we have those 4 nice standoffs there. So we want to take our Pi, and we're going to mount the Pi to the back of the display. Now, when you look at the SD cable here, you don't want it, where I'm putting it right now, underneath. We've found, and on like the Raspberry Pi 4, there's some RF interference that could interfere with the transmitting of data over the cable. So we actually are going to prefer to have the cable go above where the DSI connector is. You have to kind of go around it. I'll show you that in a minute. But by putting it underneath like this, you could potentially run into SD card errors or games loading very slow, and we don't want that. So this, what I'm showing you right here, people would think this is the right way to do it, and I wish it was. It'd be a little cleaner. But we found there's been some interference. So we do not want to install it that way. We, in fact, want to take it and wrap it around where the DSI cable is. So I'm just going to take it and just move it to the right like so we can still get access to that display connector. We're going to put it on like this, and we're going to secure this with the longer posts. Just move that over to the side like so. We're going to put that cable in, and again, we'll lock down. First, you have to obviously pull up the zip. I should have said you have to pull up the zip connector on the Pi, put the cable in, and then press down on it. But what I'm going to do is lock the Pi in place first using those longer standoffs. I just use 2 for right now, just so you can kind of see it's holding the Pi in place. We're going to take that cable. It's going to go into the ZIF on the Pi 3. We just have to make sure that zip is up. Slide the cable in. And we'll lock it down. We'll put it down just so I can get the zip in right. Because you want to make sure when you're putting that cable in, the cable is in straight. And you push down on that zip on both sides to lock it in place. Just to make sure the cables are making the proper connectors. And there you go. It's not difficult to do. But it does take 2 hands. And you can see that the SD card cable is going around the side. And now I'm going to lock the Pi in with all 4 of the longer standoffs. Again, hand tightening is just fine. You don't need to wrench it in. That's it. The cable's going to go around just like that. Again, if you did put it underneath, it'll probably work. But again, we've seen longer load times, most likely due to some RF interference between the Pi and the display. So this way just guarantees you won't have that problem. Next thing we're going to work on here is all the cables that are going to plug in to the left side of the Pi, our HDMI, our audio, and power. You want to put it in now because once the Pi goes inside the Build-A-Cade, you won't be able to access these ports because the machine is going to be closed up and it's very tight on the left and right sides. So now this connector right here is only for a Pi 4. So we have a power cable for the Pi 3A and B, and we have a separate cable for Pi 4. We have our USB and our audio jack cables here as well. So I'm not putting a Pi 4 in, so this cable won't be used. Here's our audio cable. We're just going to go to our Pi and plug that into our little jack right here on the side. It'll click in place just fine. The straight connector goes to the back of the unit. The right angle is going to go into the Pi itself. Next, we're going to take the power connector. Now, this is going to be a micro USB to USB-A. The micro USB only goes in one way. It's going to go in right here. Now I'm showing you the USB cables. We're going to plug them in later. Do not plug them in now. I'm just showing you how they're going to go. We do not want to leave them in at this point. They have to be removed because they have to be put in later in the build. They can't be put in now. But I did forget to put in the HDMI cable. So make sure you take the HDMI cable and plug that into your HDMI port as well. I just didn't record it when I did it. Just make sure you pull out those USB cables for right now. You can do it later. It's not a problem, but they can't be in this step. I was just showing you physically how they would connect. You can see here is the one for the Pi 4. There is a right angle on it. Make sure that right angle is facing basically up. Otherwise, it'll hit the unit. And here is our main wire harness. This is going to connect the GPIO pins on the right side. There's 40 pins on the Pi to all our controls and other functions of the unit. Again, everything is marked, so you know exactly what you'll be needing in the instruction manual. And if we look at the big header pin, the 40 pin, we do mark pin 1 and pin 40. Now, pin 1 is close to the DSI monitor connector. Pin 40 is closer to the SD card. I'm sorry, closer to the USB ports on the back and the Ethernet port. So I'm going to show you the unit right here. It's a little hard to see with the cable in place, but my finger is right now. That's your pin 1. All the way up here is your pin 1. That's pin 40 down there. Just make sure everything's out of the way. and we're going to plug in a wire harness. Again, pin 1 to pin 1, pin 40 to pin 40. Make sure you go down straight as you can. And it will have a little resistance. You have 40 pins you're pressing in. Just press down, and it will go in place. There you go. Glen did it. Make a little room over here. Because now we're going to start assembling the unit. We're going to take the left side of the unit. And you can see there are grooves in there. Everything kind of slots right in place. Arcade Workshop did a phenomenal job, as well as tsticks, on the manufacturing process of making this very easy to assemble. And the tolerances are just about perfect. Everything clicks and locks in place very easily. So that little shelf of the display goes towards the top of where the light up marquee will be. And again, just take your time. It should slide right in place and lock in fairly well. You can see there's the grooves right there. Just going to go in place and hold itself when you lay it back down. Get our cables out of the way, and that's it. You're on your way to building your own personal arcade. Now, the next part is the light up marquee. We have two separate parts for that. The smaller piece goes to the top of the unit. The larger piece goes to the bottom of the unit. And the larger piece has a hole in it because there is a nub on the side. See that little hole right there? So it'll go in the nub to kind of lock it in place and helps holding the unit together, believe it or not. Arcade Workshop, Gary at Arcade Workshop did a really awesome design on this. Just going to tilt it up here a little bit so you can kind of see it a little bit better. I do apologize. I don't have a cameraman, so sometimes it's a little hard to get some of these angles. But just make sure you line up the larger hole at the bottom, and the light up marquee will kind of hold itself in place as well. You see the display unit in the pie is really sitting in place. It's not sliding or flopping over. There we go. Everything should kind of hold itself in place. If it's in the right spot, it'll probably be very stable, holding itself up while you're working. If it's not in perfectly, it'll flop over and you'll know it's not in correctly. Just trying to move this a little bit so you can kind of see what we're doing here a little bit better. I'm just trying to straighten up some of the wires here a little bit. There's actually a twist tie that I should have removed before. The twist tie is just holding all the wires together, but we're going to need to separate these cables. And the cables themselves are also marked. We're going to have one set of cables going to the front of the unit for the controllers, which is this one right here. And the connector, again, only goes in one way. It locks in place on the bottom. Now, this goes directly to the GPIO pins. So this cable will be used when you swap out your controllers. It's just mostly this one cable. But some, like the trackball and the spinner, actually go USB as well. So there'll be a cable for that included in those boxes. Again, when the controller's in the right spot, it'll just lock in place and hold itself just fine. I can press the joystick and it's going to keep itself stable. Now it's time for the coin door. Now it's up to you. You can put your coin door in first. I'm doing the front door area first. I put the coin door in later. Now the coin door, when you put it in, you have to use a little force to press it in. So it might be easier to put it in now versus when I put it in, because you have to press in and kind of hold it back as you click it in place. Now here is the bezel. Now, of course, depending on if you get anything from Joe Szabos, you might have a decal you put on here. Here I'm just removing the protective two sides here. But it would be the same technique. You would use a piece of tape, line it up, lay it down, tear off the backing, and lay it down flat. So again, we don't include anything on this here for our build, but if you do get one from Joe Szabos, you might be putting a decal on that later on. Again, all you have to do is just line up between the joystick area and the screen, and it's just going to slide right down in place. Perfect. Believe it or not, it's already time to put on the right side. You can see how quickly this is going. Now again, where the light up marquee is, there is a nub and a hole. That once you line that up, I'm pointing out right there's the nub. It's going to go in the hole. Once you get that lined up, everything else will kind of just fit right in place. The tolerances that Arcade Workshop did here is really good. And that's it. Look at that. Try to get your Arcade 1 up to fit that easy. I always had a hard time getting them put together when you try to join them. But this thing just clicks right in place. Next thing we have to do is to put in the top. It gets going to slide in place now. I will note, I don't know if you can see it here in the video, but at the very top by the light up marquee, there is like a locking mechanism. When you slide this in place, there's going to be resistance at the last maybe 1/4 of an inch. So you don't have to force it in just yet, but just slide in place to hold it. And when you stand it up, you can put your hands between the marquee sides and the top and lock it in place. You'll see it later in the video. But don't be concerned if it doesn't go in 100%. That last maybe 1/8 of an inch locks it in place, which is what you want. You want the machine to hold itself together. And it is slotted. Just make sure you have both the left and right slots lined up, slide it in place. Right about there. You'll see there's resistance right there, and that is okay. When we stand the machine up, we'll lock it in its final position when we stand it up. So we're going to do the same thing now with the bottom, which has our battery. And of course, the battery cable is facing the back of the unit. That's the front of the unit I just pointed to right there. And there's an arrow. Again, all the plastic here has arrows, so you know which is the front of the unit. Just line up your holes, and it'll slide right in place. And again, that has the same thing. So it's easier once you're kind of holding it up to press on the left and right sides of the unit to lock that last part in place. The resistance is normal. You'll see it right here. I'm going to turn around to the front, and I will grab the left and right side of the front. Don't press on the marquee, but around the marquee. Just press, and it will lock in place. And that's what's building the machine's rigidity. Big word for me to say. And you can see now everything is flush and smooth and perfect. And the bottom, it's the same deal. I didn't record that part, but you have to press down. Same thing. That'll lock that part in place. Now, this is our LEDs for the light up marquee. Those 3 items are the LEDs. That's going to be facing the front of the unit. Again, there's an arrow. So we'll stand the unit back up. And you can see there's a JTS connector on the back. There's your 3 LEDs and your JTS connector and a hole for the cable to come up through, and then we'll connect that to the light up boards. We'll slide in place just a little bit, and then we're going to take our JTS wire, and we'll just get it through this cables here and line it up through the hole. Just going to make sure it's a little neater here. It's funny how I'm a stickler for so many things, but a wire mess is not a big deal for me. It's kind of weird. So it's going to put that up right up here. And the JTS connector only goes in one way. It's keyed. Just press it in place. And then you can slide it all the way in. Again, there is some resistance. That's normal. You want it to be able to hold the machine together. Now, this is an important part. There's the front of the unit right there. This is the part, which we'll do another video on when you want to change controllers out. You'll be sliding that out to gain access to the controller area. But it's a U shape for a reason. you want to make sure that the solid part of the U goes to the front of the unit. The open part is the back of the unit. You have to pull all the cables up and out of the way. Make sure the audio cable, every cable in the machine is picked up when you slide that in. And that now really made this machine pretty solid. Now, at this point, we can now connect our USB cables. The cables would have blocked that U-shaped connector from going in. So now that we did that, it's going to tilt the unit down. It'll be hard for you guys to see. But I showed you before how the cables go in. Just make sure all these wires are out of the way. And you can slide in the 2 cables to USB ports on your Pi. And there's plenty of room. It's not hard to do. And they go right in. Now, this is what I'm putting in my front Marquee. You can see we have the connector here. Again, it's a single keyed area. You can't put it in wrong. We must find our cable, which we have right here. And that's going to go in there. Now, again, you could probably put this in earlier, but it would have made maybe the cable a little harder to connect. I don't think it would have been too difficult, but in any case, I'm doing it now. Just got to run it through the front of the unit, like so. Take our board. You see it's keyed on one side. Can't put it in backwards. We're going to connect it. And then it's going to go in from the bottom of the unit first. So it's going to go in bottom, and then you fold it up. So it's going to feel like there's a lot of resistance trying to push it in the rest of the way. That is normal. What I do is I do pull out the headphone jack to make sure that that rubber grommet doesn't hit on the side as you're putting it in. I push it in just till it doesn't move anymore, and then I'm going to take one hand, go inside the unit, and hold the board where I'm pressing in on the control panel there. And then it'll lock in place. You'll hear some plastic squeaking. That is normal. We have a very tight tolerance here. This is supposed to be a solid unit, and we make sure those tolerances are right. So I'm going to put my hand inside the unit and give some firmness to the back of the board holding the coin slots, and it will go in place. Just also make sure, again, that rubber grommet is held out, and that is now in fully. The buttons work, and our grommet still works, and that is done. Next, we're down to the back panel. We are almost done, everyone. I'll put this over to the side for a moment. Turn this around. First thing we're going to start with is our SD card connector. That's going to go right to this location right here, and there's 2 screws that's going to hold that in. Again, the bag for these screws are clearly marked, and it's also noted in the manual. Just need 2 screws. And when we put this in, the white part will face the motherboard on the device. And it goes in perfectly. Just make sure it's nice and flat. And then we'll take our 2 screws, put it in the 2 holes, and again, hand tightening. There's no need to crank down on this. Once it's hand tight and stops, you're good. Once you feel some resistance, you are good to go. I'll put this right here just for a second. Next thing we're going to do is our HDMI connector. Again, the Raspberry Pi 3A and 3B only support this HDMI connector at this time. The Raspberry Pi 4 does not. We'll take the 2 screws, again marked in the manual in the bag, and lock the HDMI connector in place. We're hoping to have support for this on the Raspberry Pi 4 later down the road, but right now that is not working, but it does work perfectly fine on a Raspberry Pi 3A and 3B. Next, we're going to connect our audio connector, and basically just taking the straight through phono plug here and plugging it directly into the back of the unit. Only one spot it can go. Next, we're going to connect the power. That's going to power our Raspberry Pi. So go to the USB-A connector on the back of the unit here, like so. Next, we'll take the power connector, connect that to the bottom of the unit, and our USB ports. Closer to the camera, the white connector was for the USB. Further away on the bottom was our battery connector. Next is for all our GPIOs, because we have a joystick and buttons on the back. We're going to connect that. That's it. It's time to close up our unit. Again, there's plenty of room inside here. Now, you can straighten up the wires if you like, but to me, out of sight, out of mind. I'm just going to close it up. And there are 6 screws back here, and these screws, however, unlike the other screws in the device, has a brass screw-in connector. So this can be screwed in and unscrewed a million times. It doesn't affect the plastic in any way, shape, or form. Again, hand tightening is just fine. So the joystick in the back here is basically a clone of the main control panel joystick. Since we do have interchangeable control panels with a steering wheel or a spinner, you may not have a joystick on the front to select your menus. This button on the back with joystick on the back will give you that ability to still select the menu items. And our last screw. And that, my friends, is it. Except for the joystick, which is the easiest part. You put down the 1 grommet, and we include 2 in the kit in case you do lose one. And you put on the ball top, it just presses on. We include 2 in case you lose one. We also include 1 for the back as well, in case you lose that one. You see, we do include spares in case you happen to lose one. And that is it, my friends. You've just built yourself a GRS Arcade Workshop Build-A-Cade. We also include, as you can see here, we do include an SD card. Now, in the next video, I will show you how the installer works. Basically, when you turn the machine on, it'll install all the software, including the adventures of Robbie Roto. And the wording of the SD card actually should be facing up. I did try putting it upside down at first, but I learned quick enough and moved it to the right side. And that is it. You built yourself one beautiful 1/6 scale arcade unit. And the next video, we'll go over how that software install works. You see at the bottom here, we got our vent hole, which will feed air into the pie if it could be needed. And I want to thank you all for watching, and do check out the next video to find out how to do this software install and play some games. Thanks for watching. Remember, no matter what you do or how you play your games, remember to game on.